Over the past few days, many friends have been asking us to talk about Japan. After all, on January 6th, we unleashed what can only be described as our most severe move yet. An enhanced export control on dual-use items, specifically targeting Japan. To be honest, I didn't really want to talk about Japan, but Japan's behavior recently has been so bizarre that it has become impossible not to. We've reached a point where, whether we want to talk about it or not, there's no way to avoid it. So yes, we have to talk about it. Let's start with January 6th. On that day, we delivered Japan a New Year's gift and officially announced an enhanced version of export controls and military civilian dual-use items directed at Japan. How harsh is this move? We've talked about it before. It involves more than 1,000 different products, covering virtually every corner of heavy industry. If applied properly, it can not only lead to Japan's demilitarization, but potentially even its de-industrialization. Why do we say that? To understand this, we have to go back quite far, all the way to 1945, to the end of World War II. At that time, the Japanese took advantage of the fact that Americans did not understand Japanese and were unfamiliar with Japan's internal system. They played a lot of tricks. How extensive were those tricks? During World War II, Japan operated under a controlled economy, something even harsher than a planned economy. Everything produced in Japan, and in the territories it controlled, was placed under strict state control. From the big things, how many rifles were produced each year, how many artillery pieces, how many warships, to the small things, how much rice an ordinary citizen could eat per day. And whether it was white rice or coarse grain, everything was regulated. They even set up a special institution with an extremely militaristic name, the Ministry of Munitions. After Japan's defeat, people from the Ministry of Munitions panicked. Think about it, their contributions during the war, combined with the fact that words Ministry of Munitions were literally hanging on the front gate. By all logic, it would have been completely normal for several of them to be charged as class A war criminals. As everyone was panicking, one smart guy stepped forward and said, "What are you afraid of? Have you forgotten how Japan rose in the first place? We were backed by the British. We Japanese may not fully understand French mentality. We may not fully understand Russian mentality either. But when it comes to Anglo-Saxons, we Japanese know them all too well." So they quickly took down the sign that said Ministry of Munitions and replaced it with Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Problem solved. And what happened next? Some officers who had actually fought American troops on the battlefield were sent to military tribunals, some imprisoned, some sentenced to death. But those Ministry of Munitions officials looted resources in northeast China, created mass graves, and forced laborers from multiple countries to Japan to be worked and tortured. They walked away completely unscathed. Not only that, they later became the so-called heroes of Japan's post-war economic revival. Shinzo Abe's grandfather, Nobusu Kishi, was among them. So after the war, did Japan rely only on this changing the signboard trick? Of course not. There were many more tricks to come. According to the Cairo Declaration of 1943 and the Potsdam Declaration of 1945, which served as Japan's surrender conditions, Japan was required to undergo complete demilitarization. Otherwise, the surrender would be considered fake. Japan was unwilling to accept this. So they came up with another trick, breaking it up and hiding it. They hid military industry inside private civilian corporations. How did they do it? Let's look at a few examples. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Everyone's heard of it, right? Sounds like a private company, doesn't it? But in reality, it is Japan's largest military contractor. Its Nagasaki shipyard alone can produce 3 to 4 destroyers per year, or 2 submarines. It assembles F-35 stealth fighters, produces Japan's domestically developed F-2 fighters, and Type 90 main battle tanks. At the same time, it also manufactures large quantities of civilian products. Then there's Kawasaki Heavy Industries. At its Gifu plant, it assembles F-35s and produces the P-1 anti-submarine patrol aircraft. Its shipyards are responsible for building Soryu-class submarines. And then there's NECDOT. It doesn't sound military at all, right? Yet Japan's air defense radar systems, reconnaissance satellites, and command and control networks are all developed by NEC. And the Japanese were very clever about it. For decades, the military sales of these companies never exceeded 10% of their total revenue. At a glance, you'd easily be fooled into thinking they were purely civilian enterprises. How many such companies does Japan have? About 1,500. This is completely different from the United States and Europe. In the US, when you hear Lockheed Martin, you know it's defense. When you hear Raytheon, you know it's radar and missiles. Now you understand where the real brutality lies in our enhanced dual-use export controls on Japan. In simple terms, for decades, Japan has been playing a game of hiding in plain sight. It thoroughly merged its military and civilian industries. The same company does both. So tell me, how am I supposed to tell whether what you buy is for building missiles or building refrigerators? If I can't tell, then there's only one solution: ban it all. If a Chinese person faced this situation, what would the reaction be? Panic. Of course, this is ruthless. People would say these companies can do both military and civilian work. Put together, that's practically the entire industrial system. And this time, we weren't even trying to hide anything. At least half of the message was stated very clearly. The export controls exist to force Japan to fulfill its obligations as a defeated nation and completely disarm. As for the other half, whether demilitarization will also lead to deindustrialization, those who understand perfectly well. To put it bluntly, if these measures are applied properly, sending Japan overnight back to pre-Meiji restoration conditions is not impossible. It could even wipe out 150 years of accumulated effort. Everything I've said so far follows normal logic. But what no one expected was that Japan's way of thinking would be completely out of sync. Recently, they've pulled off a series of deeply bizarre moves. The first bizarre move, on Japanese media, especially television, they keep inviting commentators to repeat one word over and over again: rare earths. So what are they talking about? Rare earths. At this point, aren't you confused? Is rare earths focus of this round of measures? No doubt the ban is a blanket ban on dual-use items. Not some, not many, all of them. Yet the people invited onto Japanese apparently learned reading comprehension from a paid teacher, because this is damn well not a rare earth issue at all. Japan isn't completely devoid of clear-headed people. Former Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba understands this perfectly, but many Japanese dislike him and don't trust what he says. When we say all dual-use items, that literally includes things like sugar, charcoal, and fertilizer. This isn't rare earths being restricted. This is Japan being subjected to a comprehensive industrial blockade by China, the world's largest industrial power. What you're fastened is not a single resource issue. It's the possibility that your entire industrial system could be hollowed out. Even daily necessities, food, clothing, housing, transportation could all be affected. Yet strangely, Japanese TV stations talk about nothing but rare earths. From morning till night, over and over again. It makes you wonder, are the Japanese really this stupid? Or are they deliberately pretending to be? And if you think that's the end of it, no. The second bizarre move followed immediately. Not only did Japanese media avoid mentioning more than 1,000 dual-use items under restriction, the Japanese government did the same and went even further. Recently, the G7 finance ministers meeting was held in Washington, D.C. Japan's finance minister, Satsuki Katayama, attended. Before leaving, he actually told the media with a hint of pride that this trip to the US was to share experiences. Share what experience? Sharing with the other 6 G7 countries how Japan had successfully responded to China's export controls in rare earths. At that point, you can only laugh. Rare earths are just a tiny fraction of the export controls. What we're targeting just Japan's entire industrial system. We thought you'd go cry for help. Instead, you said you were going to share success stories. Honestly, we truly don't understand your intelligence. And that experience he shared directly taught third bizarre move. And that experience sharing immediately led to third bizarre move. Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry began sending a unified message outward. There's no need to panic. This is just a rare earth issue. They even try to reassure domestic industries, saying China has restricted rare earths before. We survived then, and we will survive again. This statement itself perfectly exposes the problem, because this time, it is not rare earths, it is dual-use items. And dual-use items mean something very specific. It means any product, any component, any material that could possibly be used for both civilian and military purposes. Not high-end weapons only, not advanced ships only, but everything in between. Steel alloys, precision bearings, machine tools, industrial chemicals, electronics, optical equipment, energy-related materials, even things as basic as fertilizers, industrial sugar, charcoal, lubricants. Once you apply the logic strictly, almost nothing is safe. This is why this round of measures is fundamentally different from anything Japan has experienced before. In the past, export controls were always point-based. This product, that material, this technology. Japan could work around them, find substitutes, switch suppliers, lobby allies. But this time, the logic is system-based. The entire system is questioned. And that's exactly what Japan cannot handle. Because Japan's post-war industrial system was built on one core assumption, that military production could be hidden inside civilian industry, and that foreign powers would tolerate it as long as the surface looked peaceful. That assumption has now been shattered. Once you acknowledge that Japan's military capabilities deeply embedded in its civilian industrial network, then the conclusion becomes unavoidable. If you want demilitarization, you must restrict the entire network. This is not punishment, this is logic. And here's the key point that Japanese media deliberately avoids. This is not a negotiation tactic. This is not a temporary pressure move. This is compliance enforcement. Japan signed the surrender documents. Japan accepted a post-war order. Japan accepted demilitarization's a legal obligation. If Japan insists on blurring the line between civilian and military production, then it must accept the consequence of that choice. And now, let's talk about the most revealing part. If this were China, how would the public react? Imagine overnight, over 1,000 categories of imports critical to industry were suddenly restricted. There would be panic, there would be outrage, there would be endless debate. Yet in Japan, what do we see? Television panels talking about rare earths again and again. Politicians pretending this is a familiar problem. Officials smiling calmly and saying they will share experiences. This level of calm does not come from confidence. It comes from denial, or worse, from a deliberate decision to not tell the truth to the public. Because once the truth is said out loud, everything changes. Once you admit this is a both entire industrial system, then you must admit Japan's economic model is at risk. Japan's rearmament path is exposed. And Japan's strategic gamble has failed. That is why the conversation is being redirected. Rare earths are convenient, they sound technical, They sound familiar, they sound manageable. 1,000 dual-use items though not. So let me say this clearly, this is not about rare earths. This is about whether Japan is willing to finally accept reality it has spent 80 years trying to escape. A reality written clearly in black and white in 1945. Demilitarization's not optional, it was a condition. And now, that condition is being enforced in the most direct way possible. Whether Japan chooses to continue pretending it doesn't understand, or finally faces the consequences, that choice is no longer ours, it's theirs.